They brought me a letter from my dead wife and told me to sign our orchard over for a grief resort in her honor. I smiled, asked to read it in my workshop, and 15 minutes later the printer's secret constellation told me exactly whose office forged her goodbye. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Arthur Mayfield. I am 72, a grandfather, and I have lived long enough to recognize when paper is pretending to be a person. The orchard behind my house is 6 acres of early pears and old apricots. My wife, Mara, planted them in staggered rows so a walk felt like reading a poem, one line soft, the next bright. She died last April. The thought of those trees wearing someone else's logo made me cold, even standing in the noon sun. My son, Colin, did not see it that way. He arrived on a blue sky Saturday with his wife, Sloane Whitaker, whose family builds hotels with soft names and hard terms. They carried flowers that did not smell like anything in a manila envelope that did. "Dad," Colin said, with a grin that tried to be 15 again, "we have good news." Sloane set the flowers on the counter, touching my forearm the way a person tests if a dish is still warm. "We found investors," she said. "A retreat to help people grieve. Mara's rest. The perfect tribute." Mara did not love crowds, guided meditations, or water features near gift shops. She loved dirt under her nails, kids sneaking second pairs, a thermos of coffee tucked into a crate of fruit. She loved quiet. Colin slid the envelope toward me. "Mom wrote a letter before she passed. She changed her mind about keeping it as it is." I opened it. It was Mara's handwriting, almost. The loops were right, the little flourish on the M like a ribbon untied. But she had a quirk the letter missed, her G never closed in one stroke. She would shade the lower loop after, like petting a nervous animal. 30 years of grocery lists, holiday notes, and a little message once hidden in my lunch pail, she never wrote a perfectly closed G on the first try. Every G in that letter was neat as a stamp. I felt something move behind my ribs and set my face the way you do when you're trying not to speak too fast. I smiled at my son. "Your mother did not tell me she wrote this," I said. "She did not want to upset you," Sloane answered, kind and professional at the same time. The letter was dated 2 weeks before Mara died. It asked me to release the property for a memorial development, claimed she gifted her name and signature to the project, and referenced a conversation with Sloane's uncle, a man who had once paced my backyard, calling it an opportunity. "I would like to read this in my workshop," I said. Mara never trusted our kitchen table with important things. "Of course," Sloane said. "Take your time." They stayed in the kitchen, pouring themselves water from the tap like they already lived here. In my workshop, I turned on the metal lamp. It has a dent from when I dropped it in 1983, it throws a serious light. I opened the drawer with my real tools, calipers that belonged to my father, a jeweler's loop for checking graphs, Tyvek tape, a blacklight wand my grandson, Eli, once used to hunt for scorpions when we visited his other grandparents in Arizona. The wand had extra uses. Years back, Eli had shown me how color printers sometimes scatter tiny yellow microdots that carry the machine's fingerprint, the date, the serial number, the time the document was printed. He had installed a small program on my phone to decode them, and we had spent an afternoon laughing over a fake treasure map I made for him, amazed that paper can tattle. I held the wand over the page and the margins winked with a shy little star field. The phone's camera caught the dots, the program translated, and a tidy row of numbers appeared. The letter had been printed 3 weeks after Mara's funeral. The date and hour stared back at me as calmly as a clock. I slid the letter back into its envelope. My hands had stopped shaking somewhere between the first and second G. In the kitchen, Colin and Sloane wore the faces of people who believe they have explained enough for you to agree with them. "It is a lot," I said, folding the envelope. "Could I make a copy so I do not misplace the original?" "Of course," Sloane said, already reassured. They left with promises and a schedule. "Investors want to break ground before winter," Colin said. "We will handle everything. You just have to sign." After their car disappeared, I walked the rows. The pears were heavy toward the tips and needed thinning. The apricots brushed my shoulders when the wind moved, sounding like a soft rain. I paused at the crate bench Mara and I knocked together the year our granddaughter, Wren, learned to say apricot and would not stop saying it. "The bench wobbles if you lean right." Mara always leaned left and told me it was a design philosophy. The evening tasted like the word bittersweet. People use it when they want to say pain and purpose can share a cup. Mara used to pickle slightly underripe apricots with cardamom. They hurt a little and then helped. We had not told anyone about the blue folder in the bank's safe deposit box. We tucked it there after our last harvest together, when the oncologist's office smelled too clean to be anything but a warning. Inside the folder were two things. The first was a conservation easement we had drafted with the Rivertown Land Trust, long before that Saturday. The document allowed family use, school field trips, a caretaker's shed, and a couple of picnic tables made from the old planks we saved from the barn. It forbade hotels, parking lots, loud events, and anything that charged admission besides the trees requiring patience. I had signed it, witnessed by our neighbors, Ruby and Will, who do not miss things. Only Mara's signature was missing. She wanted to write it with the dip pen she used to teach with. The second was a note to me. "Art, no puzzles with me, please. Keep the orchard for work and kids and quiet. If anyone tries to sell my name, tell them my name is busy. Mara." The next morning, I called the land trust. A woman named Celia Sue answered and asked me to come in. The trust's office is above a bakery, the whole floor smells like cinnamon. Celia poured coffee and ran a finger over the easement like it was a map. "We can record this," she said. "It will bind the land, not just the current owner." The trust's counsel, Daniel Ortiz, came in from a meeting with his tie half untied and kind eyes. "I am sorry for your loss," he said, "which matters more when you can tell the person means it." By noon, the county clerk, Ms. Loomis, stamped the papers and slid them back under the glass with a purposeful little thump. "Perpetual," she said, tapping the word. "That is a commitment." "It is the right one," I answered. I went home with more than stamped paper. I went home with a calm that felt like finding the right tool on the first try. That afternoon, I called Colin. I asked him to email me a scan of Mara's letter, so I would not lose the original. He sent it in minutes. He did not know scanned files carry crumbs. The metadata showed the creation date, the editing software, and the user account name of the computer that saved it. Sloane W. Exec. The time matched the microdots. I did not sleep much that night. I was not angry the way people in stories say they are angry, red and shaking. I was a cool room. I sat at the kitchen table and thumbed the edge of the easement until my fingerprint shined on the paper. I thought about Colin at 6, his long lashes and the fierce way he would defend a worm on the driveway after rain. I thought about the years I missed dinners because a project ran late, the times I let Sloane explain the world while I stayed quiet. You do not raise a son to be dishonest, not on purpose. You can raise him to be careless with what is not his if you are not careful with what is yours. On Wednesday, I made a small circuit of places where Mara's handwriting lived. At the community college library, Mr. Hargrove, the program director for continuing education, unlocked a cabinet and laid out a folder of samples from Mara's calligraphy workshops. On a sheet of tracing paper, she had written 2 pages of letter G's with notes in the margin, never closes in one stroke. She had drawn a cartoon arrow toward the gap with a smiley face, as if to scold the letter gently. Mr. Hargrove also found the video she recorded for her last class. We filmed it because she said hands forget if they are not reminded, he told me. He sent me the file. At my desk that evening, I watched her on my laptop. There she was, gray hair in a loose bun, that shirt she loved with little pear blossoms, a spill of ink on her thumb. She explained the temptations of speed. She laughed when the nib skipped. When you love someone, she said, looking up, you recognize their handwriting in the dark. I closed the laptop and sat a long time with my hand on it. I thought about the way grief is a house with rooms that look the same until you turn on the light. Thursday's zoning board meeting smelled like coffee and dry air. The chairs made that tired squeak as people sat down. I wore my wedding ring and the only tie Mara ever talked me into buying, blue with tiny leaves that pass for serious in a room of budgets. Sloane's team from Whitaker Hospitality unrolled glossy renderings on easels. They had labeled my oldest trees, reflection pathways, and put a resource center where the apricots cast the best shade. They had drawn a fountain near the spot where Wren once set up tea for her stuffed rabbit and me, and where we both ended up soaked when the sprinkler misbehaved. Reverend Bell from the church on Cedar, kind as ever, had come because someone told him this was healing. Mr. Mayfield, said the chairwoman, Asha Patel, would you like to speak before or after the presentation? After, I said. If you please. Sloane presented with the smoothness of a person who never needs to ask for the room's attention. She talked about access and activation and underutilized assets. Colin stood behind her, nodding in time with words he did not choose. When they finished, I walked to the document table. My hands were steady. It surprised me, how steady. I appreciate your time, I told the board. Before you consider this proposal, you should know that yesterday a conservation easement was recorded on my property. It is perpetual. It forbids commercial development, hotels, retreats, and memorial resorts. It encourages school visits, picnics, pruning, and the occasional old man humming to his trees. It is what my wife and I decided together. Sloane stood a little taller, then smiled in a way that suggested she had planned for this too. With respect, she said, Mr. Mayfield's late wife wrote a more recent letter. She changed her mind. She handed copies to the board and, very graciously, to me. In that case, I said, let us consider the letter closely. I asked for the room's screen and speakers. Chair Patel nodded. I played a short clip from Mara's class, the part where she talks about the letter G, about how love makes you recognize a hand in the dark. I set the project copy down under the document camera. Every G here is closed in a single stroke. My wife never did that. A murmur moved through the room. Sloane did not flinch. People write differently on different days, she said gently. They do, I agreed. So let us look at which day this was made. I clicked on the blacklight wand and swept it over the corner of the page. The yellow constellation appeared like shy stars finally trusting the night. I zoomed in. Along the bottom edge, small decoded numbers lay like coordinates. The date, 3 weeks after Mara's funeral. The printer, one registered to Whitaker Hospitality. You emailed me a scan, I said to Colin, not unkindly. The file shows it was created on Sloane's account at 10:14 in the evening on the same date. I will include that information in the packet for the county attorney. Colin gripped the back of a folding chair. He looked more like the boy who used to hold my finger than the man who calls a tree an amenity. Then the look passed. Sloane reached for the letter, then set her hands flat on the table. I kept my eyes on the board, on Ms. Loomis, on Reverend Bell. Mara's name is not available for sale, I said. It belongs to a woman who wanted quiet and work and children with sticky hands. Her wish is now law on that land. Chair Patel cleared her throat. Thank you, Mr. Mayfield. No one asked Sloane to continue. By the time I reached the parking lot, Sloane was already in her car. Colin stood beside mine, pale. Dad, he said. We just wanted. You wanted to build something that throws shadows, I said. We grew a place that makes dappled light. He blinked. I did not know about the printer thing. That is true, I said. There are several things you do not know. He took a breath. Sloane will sue. She may try, I said. She will learn that nothing grows in that direction. I drove home slowly, making every light. The orchard looked like itself, which felt like victory. That night, I brought Mara's blue folder to the kitchen table and finished the work we started. I established a modest foundation in her name to fund summer apprenticeships in the orchard for teenagers who think grief means stillness. I arranged for a portion of annual harvests to go to the food pantry. I wrote letters to Eli and Wren that they will open when they turn 16, folded around seed packets and a map of the irrigation lines. On Friday, I visited Daniel Ortiz again. We rewrote my will. The house and orchard transfer to the foundation as a caretaker's cottage and its grounds. The savings go to the land trust, the college calligraphy program, and the library's quiet room, now to be dedicated to a woman who preferred whispers to microphones. Not 1 cent goes to Colin or to my daughter, Hannah, who had stayed silent through all of this because silence is easier until it is not. I did not do it to punish them, though they will feel punished. I did it because I do not trust them with something that is not theirs. When I came home, I set an envelope on the table with Colin's name. Inside was a copy of the easement, the file printout with the microdot decode, a thumb drive with Mara's video, and a note in my blocky hand. I loved you when you were little and angry at the rain for ruining your baseball game. I cannot fix who you have chosen to be. Do not come back here. The gate code has changed. I sat on the porch under the light. Mara insisted we keep on because a home should not greet you in darkness. A fox crossed near the fence on its silent errands. The orchard clicked as it cooled. I thought about the kind of man who will be remembered for the things he refused, and whether that is a decent legacy. I decided it is. New routines grew in the space where family dinners used to be. On Tuesdays, the 6th graders came to thin pears and learned that fruit grows better when you let some go. On Thursdays, the library sent over a teenager to scan Mara's old lesson plans so the calligraphy program would have them forever. Once, I caught myself saying, "we" aloud to the empty room and did not apologize to anyone about it. A week later, Hannah called. "Dad," she said, voice careful, "Colin is saying you were manipulated." I was, I said. By grief. Then I opened the window. I told her about the dots, the dates, the easement with Mara's quiet wish inside it. Hannah exhaled, a sound that could have been a sob or a laugh. She did not take sides then. People hardly ever do on time. I did not attend any more birthdays. I mailed cards to Eli and Ren because I am a grandfather, and grandfathers mail cards. I kept the orchard calendar, pruning, grafting, thinning, picking, mulching. Seasons become pages of a book you can actually put your hand on. That helped. The hard part is not a moment. It is many small ones. There is the first Sunday you realize no one will throw open your back door and shout that they brought bagels. There is the day you fix the squeak on the crate bench and no one complains that it was charming. There is a morning you almost send a photograph of dew in a spider web to your daughter-in-law because she used to like that kind of thing before she liked her name on brochures. In June, the first apricot of the season warmed in my palm. I bit and tasted the tart edge give way to sweetness, the way Mara used to smile, reluctant at first, then all the way there. Bittersweet is a true word, if you let it be honest. When the zoning board's letter arrived, it was brief. The project application had been withdrawn. No further hearings. The last line read, "Thank you for your participation, Mr. Mayfield." It felt like a quiet that could finally be called peace. I planted 2 new saplings where Whitaker's renderings had drawn a fountain. They are young yet, but when the wind moves through their leaves, it sounds like someone turning the pages of a book made of light. In August, the school bus wheezed to a stop at the end of our lane. A handful of kids walked down to help pick. Ren, now tall enough to bump her chin on the lower branches, reached for a pear and looked up at me. "Granddad," she asked, "will it always be like this?" "As long as I can help it," I said. "And I have helped it." She nodded, serious as a judge, and carefully set a pear into the bin like it was going to sleep. I lost a son and a daughter-in-law. I lost the picture of holidays that had been fading anyway while I was busy telling myself it was not. The house is too quiet in winter, and the chair across from mine stays empty and always will. Those are losses, and I do not pretend otherwise. I kept my wife's wish. I kept our orchard alive. I kept our name out of a lobby. There is a moment at dusk when the rows go dark and the sky stays pale and the orchard breathes like something living. I sit with my back against a trunk and listen. Sometimes I take out the little loop and look at the edge of a leaf, the way the cells hold hands to keep the world from leaking out. Every now and then, when the sun catches exactly right, I see the faintest curve in the shadow at my feet, the shape of a G that never quite closes unless you convince it. It is our secret, Mara's and mine, meant for someone who knows how to look. And if I have to hold it alone, I will.
Greetings, and thanks for spending your time with us today. I truly hope you enjoyed the video. I want to wish you a peaceful day or a restful evening, wherever you may be. Take care, and we'll see you next time.